In 2022, Ola Källenius, the chief executive of Mercedes, turned on his own buyers to chase the rich. He raised prices, killed the cheap models, and started charging extra for things the car already did. It would cost the company the better part of 15 billion euros. For a year, it looked like genius. But then the buyers who had saved their whole lives for the badge did the math. The new electric flagship lost nearly half its value in 1 year, and dealers could not move them. So how did the most trusted car on earth become the fastest way to lose money? It starts with a promise Mercedes made a century ago and the day it quietly broke it. For most of the last 100 years, a Mercedes was the safest money a working man could spend. It did one thing better than any rival. It held. The value held, the quality held, the meaning held. A man could buy one, drive it for 15 years, hand it to his son, and the badge on the hood still meant exactly what it did the day he signed for it. That promise had a sound, the heavy bank vault thunk of the door closing, the deep burble of a hand-assembled V8 in an AMG. It had a name too, the best or nothing. 4 words from Gottlieb Daimler, the man who refused to put his name on anything that fell short. For 3 generations, Mercedes lived inside those 4 words, overbuilding everything, paying for parts no customer would ever see, because the badge was a guarantee the car would hold up when nothing else did. And the believers were never the rich. The rich could buy anything. They were the contractors and the retired teachers who saved for years for the 3-pointed star, because it was the one purchase in their lives that would not betray them. They were buying the certainty that they had bought well. Therefore, that certainty, that trust, was the single most valuable thing the company owned. And in 2022, the people running Mercedes looked at the one thing no rival could copy and decided it was a cost to cut. On paper, it was the best year Mercedes had ever had. The company sold roughly 2 million cars and posted operating profit of 20.5 billion euros, with margins almost no luxury rival could touch. Källenius called it the economics of desire. Mercedes would stop building cars for everyone, kill the cheap models, and sell fewer cars at far higher prices to people who would pay anything. Because those record profits were a supply shock mirage. A global chip shortage had choked the car industry, and scarcity drove prices through the roof. When the chips flowed again, demand for cars priced past $100,000 proved nowhere near as deep as Stuttgart believed. The warning was right there in the data. Mercedes read it as a victory, and to make itself a pure luxury bet for investors, the company had already cut loose its own safety net. In late 2021, it spun off Daimler Truck, the boring, dependable, profitable division that had carried it through every downturn for decades. The hedge was gone. The everyman was next. The first crack showed up in the one car that was supposed to prove the whole strategy, the EQS. Mercedes built it as the new electric flagship and became obsessed with a single number, a world record drag coefficient for a production car. Technically, a triumph. On the street, a disaster. The $100,000 flagship looked like a swollen jelly bean next to the classics it replaced, and buyers did not see a Mercedes in it. The resale market was even less forgiving. In its first year on American roads, the EQS lost roughly half its value, the worst 1-year depreciation of any new car in a major study. Around $65,000 gone on a single car. Dealers watched them sit for months. A Mercedes was supposed to hold. This one could not. The company's own design chief later admitted the car was probably 10 years too early, and Mercedes quietly killed the next generation. But a single ugly car does not explain a betrayal this wide. Behind the one bad car was a balance sheet coming apart. At the height of the desire strategy, Mercedes earned 20.5 billion euros in operating profit. 3 years later, it had fallen to under 6 billion euros. The better part of 15 billion euros was gone. But not all of that was the strategy. China turned, tariffs bit, the pandemic boom faded. But every rival faced those storms. The luxury gamble was the part Mercedes chose alone, and the part that broke faith with the buyer. The division that builds the cars watched its margin collapse from nearly 15% to barely 4%. In China, the market that had quietly funded the whole company for a decade, sales fell by more than a quarter, and they were still falling in the most recent quarter of 2026, as cheaper local electric cars ate the luxury brands alive. And the inventor of the automobile shelved its own crown jewel, pausing Drive Pilot, the most advanced self-driving system on the road because too few people wanted it. The most innovative company in the history of the car stopped innovating because the accountants said so. And the numbers were only round one. The deeper betrayal was something a balance sheet cannot measure. For decades, the AMG division was the emotional core of Mercedes, the promise that the money bought not just a car, but a feeling, its heart, a hand-built V8 and a burble that announced an AMG from a block away. Then Mercedes released the new C63, the car that had carried that sound for a generation, and the V8 was gone, replaced by a four-cylinder hybrid borrowed from Formula One, powerful on paper, empty in the seat. The head of AMG, Michael Sheeby, admitted the brand had lost the customers who were just there for the V8. The four-cylinder C63 is already being killed off. This was never really about one electric car or one missing engine. It was about a company that had decided the things its customers loved most were costs to cut. The same decision showed up everywhere the buyer actually touched the car. In models costing $80,000 and up, owners and reviewers found hard, scratchy plastic where there used to be metal and wood, buttons that felt loose and cheap. Then Mercedes began charging a subscription to unlock acceleration the engine already had, around $1,000 a year. The hardware was already bolted in, the speed already there. The company locked it behind a yearly fee and asked the owner to pay rent on a car he had already bought. And it tore up the bond with the dealers who had sold the badge for generations, moving to a fixed-price model that turned salesmen into clerks. When Australian dealers sued, Mercedes won in court. It was within its rights. The real question is what kind of company picks that fight with its own dealers and calls it progress? One by one, the loyal buyer was charged more and handed less. The car cost more, felt cheaper, and lost value faster than almost anything on the road. Everything that made the badge worth saving for was being stripped away. And the strangest part was still coming, because the people running Mercedes were about to admit, out loud, that they had been wrong. By 2025, the reversal was impossible to hide. Källenius, the man who had sold the world on the economics of desire, began backing away from the word luxury itself, saying the company had never really described its strategy that way. Mercedes started talking about volume again, about bringing back the smaller, cheaper cars it had killed, with a new entry-level Mercedes due by 2028. The long-serving design chief who had shaped the brand's look for nearly 2 decades left in a management reshuffle as Källenius tightened his grip. The company that had spent 3 years insisting it was too good for ordinary buyers was quietly trying to win them back. They had messed up, and now they knew it. For most stories, that admission would be the ending. This one has one more turn. Because admitting the mistake does not fix the deeper problem, and the deeper problem is who is left to fix it. To survive the slide, Mercedes is cutting €5 billion in costs, offering buyout packages to tens of thousands of workers, and spending €2 billion buying back its own shares to prop up the stock while the business underneath keeps losing money. Here Mercedes is more exposed than any rival. BMW has the Quant family, who own nearly half the company and can ride out any storm. Volkswagen has the Porsche and Peach families. Mercedes has no one. There is no anchor owner to hold it steady. Most of the shares trade freely in the hands of investors who leave the moment the stock drops, and close to a fifth of the company is already held by Chinese interests, about half of that held by a Chinese state-owned car maker. Every fall in the share price makes that influence cheaper to buy. The badge still says Stuttgart. The open question is who it answers to. Mercedes will probably survive this. Europe is buying again, and the company swears the worst is behind it. But survival was never the promise. Gottlieb Daimler built a company on 4 words, the best or nothing. For 100 years, a Mercedes held its value, its quality, and its meaning, and the working man who saved for one was buying a guarantee that it always would. That guarantee is what the company spent. and trust is the one thing a buyback cannot buy back. A Mercedes was supposed to hold, it didn't. If you remember when a Mercedes door used to close with that heavy, certain thunk, and you have felt that certainty slip away, you already understand this story better than the people who run the company. There are more of these on the channel, the brands that forgot what they were built on. They are worth your time.